Hello. How is everyone? Can they hear me okay? I feel really close to the screen right now. Do you guys mind putting in the chat box that you can hear me? Oh, yep, yes, can hear me. Thank you, Heidi. I'm so glad people are showing up. I was a little nervous with my inactive link, and then someone else pointed out that I said tomorrow when I meant today, this morning. So thank you for showing up. I really appreciate it. Again, reminder, if you have a question, which I encourage questions, I love questions, please put them in the chat box, not in the Q&A. It's easier for me to find. What's the time? 10:02. Let's go ahead and start. So today I wanted to talk about soy. Is it friend or foe? There's a lot of controversy around soy. I would say it's right up there with wheat. I get a lot of questions about it when I do nutritional lectures. I think I had a couple of them when I did my happy hour, your healthy happy hours at the MAC. And there's just been a lot of controversy, and there's a lot of different reasons that soy, there's conflict around it. One, when we're talking about what the effects on humans, we're looking at health effects, GMO versus non-GMO versus phytoestrogens, that type of stuff. I will say the problem with some of those is that we're looking at human trials versus animal trials. We're trying to make comparisons between different ethnic groups, different hormone levels between men and women, types of soy, amount of soy, and then there's a whole controversy about farming practices as well. So I wanted to kind of touch on each of those and then just give my final opinion on what I thought of them. Soy is a legume. It's high in polyunsaturated fat, which means that there's not a lot of saturated fat. It's low in cholesterol, high in fiber, high in vitamins, minerals, and protein. But as a naturopath, I'm worried because it's it's a big 8 of major food allergens. So it's not just it is a great food, but there are a lot of people who are allergic to soy or have food intolerances. And the problem with soy is that there's a lot of hidden sources of it. So I think most people know about soy in the form of like tofu, tempeh, miso broth, soy sauce, that type of stuff. But there's a lot of hidden sources. We put soy protein in a lot of processed foods, a lot of like canned meats, processed meats, tuna, cereal. A lot of your vegetable starches or gum or broths can have soy in them. There's infant formula. A lot of people have been using, as of late, protein bars, adding protein powder to their smoothies, which can be soy-based. They're found in cookies, crackers, low-fat peanut butter, that type of stuff. So my point is we can get inundated with a lot of different sources of soy versus just eating whole, soy products. I do think it can be an excellent replacement of proteins, especially proteins that are high in saturated fat, like red meat. Soy is an actual complete protein, meaning it has all the amino acids in it. But I will say that soy might have a greater negative impact on the planet than, let's say, beef, pork, or chicken. And they have found that cutting meat and dairy from your diet can reduce your carbon footprint by 73%. But soy itself requires a lot of acreage. We're finding that a lot of countries like South America are being stripped of their rainforest due to trying to farm soy. It is one of the biggest crop by acreage. In the US, we predominantly use it for animal feed, poultry, livestock, and actually ship it out. Most soy that we use for human consumption comes from China. There are the whole GMOs, genetically modified foods, controversy. The US uses mainly genetically modified food to help with resistance to herbicides and to increase its oleic content, make it more fatty since we are using it for animal feed. About 93% of the soy that's farmed or agricultured in the US is genetically modified. My feeling on genetically modified is not black and white. There have been no known risks for genetically modified foods, but yet the fear is really rampant. It's in some senses, we've been genetically modifying food for centuries. Just consumers didn't know about it. We were trying to change the nutritional profile of them, make them more resistant to insects, that type of stuff. A lot of what consumers are advocating for is they want to be known if their food is genetically modified, so that they can assess if they want to partake in eating that food. The questions are, does it change the nutritional content? Does it create more allergens or toxic effects? The studies are nearly impossible to say definitively one way or another if genetically modified foods are bad for us. There have been some small studies that actually have shown benefit because, let's say there was a study on corn. Corn can tend to get fungus on it. They made genetically modified corn that was more resistant to insect damage, and thus farmers could use less pesticides. And so in that sense, that corn was actually better for us because it had less pesticides, which corn generally has a lot. Maybe, some of these genetically modified foods means you can get larger yields, which means less acreage having to be used. So I'm not a hard no. I am definitely pro that we should be educated. Our foods should be labeled if they're genetically modified or not. And then we should be able to decide, did that provide benefit, nutritional benefit, or not for us? There have been, as far as how it helps or does not help with in human consumption, there have been clinical studies in East and Southeast Asia where diets where the nutritional profile is high in edamame, tofu, soy milk, that type of stuff, and that those populations have shown greater health, less heart disease, less cancer, less diabetes, that type of stuff. But what we have found is that their actual quantity of consumption is much less than we assumed or media portrayed or whatnot. They consume only about 6 to 11 grams of tofu or soy. That's about like 3 ounces of soy. So it's not as much as we thought. And that maybe the health benefits are more about their cuisine that's high in vegetables and that type of stuff. I do have an issue with processed soy. I will be definitive about that. A lot of your processed soy that you use to make meat alternative products use TVP, which is texturized vegetable protein. If you were to look at the label of like a Morningstar sausage or garden burger or whatnot, you're going to see soy flour, soy protein, but you're also going to see like cotton seeds, wheat, oats, that type of stuff. For this Morningstar sausages, their first ingredient is water, and then it's wheat flour. There are some products that seem a little bit better. The Beyond Burgers, after water, their first ingredient is pea protein, so that's slightly better. But it's still processed, and I don't believe that we should be intaking a lot of processed foods. I think that if you have to open a box or a package or thaw something, it's probably not the best for you. I do believe that we should eat foods in their natural state. The big controversy comes from soy being what we call a phytoestrogen. These are plant compounds that weakly bind to estrogen receptors. They're called isoflavones. We see isoflavones in chickpeas, fava beans, pistachios, peanuts, but none of them contain the same amount of isoflavones to the same degree as we see in soy. Isoflavone supplementation has been shown to help with bone density, cardiovascular disease, hot flashes, and that type of stuff in women. And because of that, we worried about its impact on breast tissue. What we have found with soy is that yes, it weakly binds to estrogen receptors and sometimes increase the estrogenic effect, but sometimes actually have an anti-estrogen effect. And so with breast tissue, we have found that the soy actually blocks more potent natural estrogens from binding to the estrogen receptor. There was a study involving 9,000 breast cancer survivors and studying their nutrition, and they found that soy actually lowered their breast cancer reoccurrence, even if they were estrogen receptor positive tumors, or they had estrogen positive, if they had estrogen receptor positive tumors, and regardless or not if they were taking tamoxifen. So that's good news. Soy also stops the formation of estrogen in fat tissues. You know, we worry about estrogen getting stored and then being able to, kind of take its couple passes in the body. Soy does have anti-inflammatory and antioxidant properties. We are studying it more for possible anti-cancer effects. And so I think adding soy to the diet in a whole food form is not bad. There was a handful of men who had sex hormone changes when they were taking soy, later to find out that they were on extremely high doses of soy, and that those negative impacts were reversed or stopped when they stopped consuming those. I think it was like 3 gallons of soy milk a day. And that another study found there was worry that it could cause sterility in men, and that there have been studies now to refute that it does not cause sterility in men, not even if you were taking the isoflavone supplement. There has been some controversy about soy being goitrogenic, meaning it can affect your thyroid function. Again, the studies that have shown that it's been goitrogenic were at very high supplementation doses. And so again, I think it's important to really differentiate eating soy in the form of like tofu, edamame, tempeh, miso, etc., versus supplementing with isoflavones. Soybean oil and soy sauce do not contain isoflavones, by the way. Then you have your whole diet world, paleo. Paleo, for instance, is really against soy because soy has lectins in them. Lectins can mess with your leptin levels. Leptin is our satiation hormone. They may also mess with your insulin levels. I will say, having said that, they do know that fermentation, as what we see in like miso or tempeh, that takes the lectins out. There have been some health claims that FDA is considering revoking its claim that soy can help lower cholesterol. Upon further studies, they have shown that soy can decrease your cholesterol, but it's minor. And I do think you have to then consider taking soy in the form of a supplement versus maybe those patients who are at a greater cardiovascular risk are people who are eating high-fat meat diets. You know, maybe the positive effect of soy in lowering your cholesterol, would be heightened when you're substituting red meat out for soy. I have a question. When you say consume soy in its whole form, what would you consider whole? Legumes versus tofu versus, yes. Great question. Thank you, Heidi. When I'm saying whole forms, I'm saying edamame, tofu, miso, tempeh, natto, like the more, true foods, the fermentation of soy or its whole, like the whole bean, versus the process where we get soy flour and soy isolates, that type of stuff. I don't like fake cheeses, fake meats, that type of stuff. I do not think those are good for us. Does that answer your question? And I think that just kind of goes to, to sum up my whole recommendation, just like in everything in life, is everything in moderation. If you're a big meat eater, then maybe supplementing a little bit of soy is a good thing, right? And especially if it's whole soy foods like tofu, because now you're lowering your saturated fat intake and maybe lowering your risk of cardiovascular disease. If you're a vegetarian or a vegan, watch out how many processed soy foods you're eating. I think that, vegetarians tend to, they miss some of the, the protein sources or the easy kind of fast foods like sausage, that type of thing. And so they can really add up on their soy isolates is what I call them. Choose fermented over processed always, or choose the whole food like tofu, edamame, that type of stuff. And as far as supplementation with menopause or bone density, I have a lot of other things in my arsenal that I would rather give you than give you just soy isoflavone. I don't think they're actually that great for reducing hot flashes. And then as far as allergies go, I would say do either get tested or do an elimination diet. Find out if you're allergic, because soy is up there. Over the last 16 years in me testing, I do not find soy to be as high up there as, let's say, peanuts or dairy or eggs. But, get tested so that you know for sure. And then you can make a decision for yourself. Does that answer everybody's questions? Soy is one of the foods in the 6 food elimination diet. Why would one eliminate soy if they tested negative, or if for it in a food allergy test? If you tested negative, then I would not eliminate food. I would not eliminate soy. That's just, it is a top allergen, and so I think people should get tested, or at least eliminate from their diet for at least a month and then add it back in and see if they have any reactions. But if you don't, then I would add soy. It's a complete protein. It's an antioxidant. It's anti-inflammatory. There's a lot of benefits to soy. So I would not eliminate it. Any other questions? I feel like light's really bright on me. Good place for soy recipes. That's a good question. Again, asking the person who doesn't cook. In my home, we use miso a lot. We like to make our own ramens and that type of stuff using miso broth. And I think I talked about that in one of my other lectures. I like to get yellow miso. It's a little bit more mild. We definitely make tofu. And sometimes we use it in like a scramble, using soft tofu and replacing it with eggs. My daughter likes to do soft tofu and use it in tacos as like a taco, as a meat replacement there. My daughter does love the soy sausages and eats them a lot. I don't necessarily approve of them, but I think every once in a while it's fine. I do not do soy milk in the house. I would rather that make the kids do oat milk or coconut milk. And then we do eat edamame. I do think it's a really good source of protein, and I'd rather the kids eat edamame and they love it versus peanuts, or eating too many, eating a lot of peanuts and other nuts for protein is also high in saturated fat, and soy is not. Plus, it's a good source of fiber. Sometimes we eat dehydrated edamame too. That's good. Soy nuts, they have a little pop to them. But yeah, I don't know about, I can't think offhand a good place to give you a recipe. I'm sorry. But there are a lot of things. If you look up soft tofu as a replacement for meat, there are a lot of meals that you can create. Wish I gave you a better answer on that one. Any other questions? No, I didn't get one in the Q&A. Why is fermented soy beneficial? Well, that's a good question. And anything fermented is good because the bacteria that you get from fermentation is good for our gut. It helps balance our microbiome. And in the form, when we talk about it with like people with like paleo and that type of stuff that are trying to watch their lectins, the fermentation process gets rid of the lectins. So I do like fermented soy. Miso, natto, Natto are good sources. Tempeh is also fermented. And I like tempeh. Tempeh you can like, you know, put seasonings on and just kind of eat it like it's almost like jerky. Did I answer your question? Anything else? Glad you guys are asking questions. Thank you. Looks like nothing else is coming in. All right, I'm going to call it. Next week, I'm going to do a lecture on micronutrients and hopefully talk about methylation. There are quite a few people in the world who can't methylate their B vitamins, which means they're not active. And I have been seeing it more and more. Vibrant America is doing a special on micronutrient testing. It doesn't say when it's going to run out, but I think it'll probably last for a couple months. So I thought it'd be a nice thing to offer patients too if they wanted to ever look at that. And sorry, micronutrients, all your vitamins and minerals. That's what micronutrients are. Macronutrients are your fats, carbs, proteins. Micronutrients are your vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, fat, like your omegas, that type of stuff. All right, thank you everybody. It was nice to see everyone still able to get on even with all the little hiccups. And I really appreciate the questions. It makes it a lot more fun for me. Thank you. Bye everybody.